The research ship Phoenix moved slowly through dark space. Captain Lisa Adams stood on the bridge, watching the stars through the big window. Her crew of 12 people had been traveling for 6 months. They were going to study a new planet in the Kepler 442 system. Jake Morrison worked in the engine room below. He was the chief engineer. His hands moved over the control panels, checking the fusion core. Everything looked normal. The big engines hummed quietly as they pushed the ship forward. "Captain," said Kate Johnson from her seat at the communications desk, "we are getting close to the planet. About 2 hours until we reach orbit." Lisa nodded. She was excited. This would be her first time leading a mission to explore a new world. The planet looked good for human life. It had water, air, and the right temperature. At least, that is what the long-range scans showed. Dr. Sam Mitchell sat in the science lab, looking at data about the planet. He was an expert on alien life. His job was to study any plants or animals they might find. The readings showed that the planet had lots of plant life. Maybe there were animals too. In the medical bay, Greg Phillips checked his supplies. He was the ship's doctor. Space travel was dangerous, and people could get hurt. He wanted to make sure he had everything he needed to help his crew. Down in the engine room, Jake heard a strange sound. It was a high whine that should not be there. He looked at his screens. The fusion core was running too hot. The temperature numbers were climbing fast. "Bridge, this is engineering," Jake said into his radio. "We have a problem down here." Lisa heard the worry in his voice. "What kind of problem, Jake?" "The fusion core is overheating. I am trying to cool it down, but something is wrong with the control systems." Lisa felt her heart beat faster. The fusion core was what powered their ship. If it failed, they would lose power and life support. In the middle of space, that meant death. "Can you fix it?" she asked. Jake's hands moved quickly over the controls. Warning lights flashed red all around. "I am trying, Captain. But the safety systems are not working right. The temperature keeps going up." In the navigation room, Tony Blake heard the alarm sounds. He was the person who planned their flight path. He knew that if the engines failed, they would crash into the planet below. The ship was too close to escape the planet's gravity pull. "Captain," Tony said over the radio, "if we lose power now, we will fall toward the planet. I can try to aim for the safer areas, but we need to act fast." Lisa made a quick decision. "All hands, this is the captain. Report to your emergency stations. We may need to abandon ship." The crew moved quickly through the ship's halls. They had practiced this many times, but it was always just training. Now it was real. Helen Carter ran from the plant lab where she studied space botany. She grabbed her emergency kit and headed for the escape pods. Danny Foster left the machine shop where he fixed broken equipment. Everyone knew where to go. In the engine room, Jake fought to control the fusion core. The temperature was now in the red zone. Dangerous radiation was building up. If the core exploded, it would destroy the entire ship. "Jake, get out of there now," Lisa shouted over the radio. "That's an order." Jake looked at the controls one more time. He could maybe buy them a few more minutes, but the radiation was getting worse. He could feel it making him sick. He grabbed his emergency kit and ran toward the escape pods. The ship shook as the fusion core became unstable. The lights went out, then came back on as emergency power kicked in. Lisa made it to escape pod bay 1. She saw Kate Johnson helping Tony Blake, who had hurt his leg when the ship shook. "Everyone into the pods now," Lisa ordered. "We have maybe 2 minutes before the core fails completely." The escape pods were small metal containers. Each one could hold 4 people. They had basic life support and simple chemical rockets. The pods were designed to get people away from a dying ship and maybe land safely on a planet Dr. Mitchell made it to Pod Bay 3. He saw Jake Morrison running down the hall, his face pale from radiation sickness. Behind them, the lights flickered. As the ship's power systems failed, "Come on, Jake," Sam shouted. "We have to go now." Jake jumped into the pod just as the fusion core gave a loud crack. The sound echoed through the ship like thunder. The floor shook under their feet. Lisa sealed her pod and hit the launch button. The chemical rockets fired, pushing them away from the Phoenix. Through the small window, she could see the ship breaking apart. Metal pieces flew in all directions as the hull cracked open. Pod Bay 2 launched with Greg Phillips, Helen Carter, Danny Foster, and Communications Officer Rick Stone. Pod Bay 3 shot away from the ship with Jake Morrison, Sam Mitchell, and 2 other crew members. The escape pods fell toward the planet below. Lisa watched as the Phoenix finally exploded. The ship that had been their home for months was now just burning pieces of metal floating in space. "All pods, this is the captain," Lisa said into her radio. "Sound off. Who made it out?" One by one, the voices came back. All 12 crew members had escaped, but now they were falling toward an alien world in tiny metal containers with no way to control where they would land. The planet grew larger in the windows. It looked brown and orange, with white clouds swirling around it. The surface had mountains, valleys, and what looked like rivers or lakes. It did not look like Earth. "Prepare for landing," Lisa announced. "Remember your training. When we hit, stay calm and check for injuries first." The pods shook as they hit the planet's atmosphere. The outside grew hot and glowed red. The small heat shields protected them from burning up, but just barely. The chemical rockets fired again, trying to slow them down for landing. Lisa's pod hit the ground hard. The impact threw her against the sidewall. Her head rang, and she tasted blood in her mouth. But she was alive. She opened the pod door and looked out. The air was thin but breathable. The ground was rocky, with some strange-looking plants. The sky was pale orange instead of blue. 3 suns hung in the sky, though 2 were small and far away. "Sound off," she called into her radio. "Who needs medical help?" The other pods had landed within a mile of each other. That was lucky. Tony. Blake had hurt his leg worse in the crash. Helen Carter had a broken arm. But everyone was alive. Jake Morrison climbed out of his pod and looked around. The landscape was empty in all directions. No signs of cities or roads. Just rocks, strange plants, and a few small streams of water. "Well," he said to Sam Mitchell, "we wanted to explore a new planet. Now we get to do it the hard way." Above them, invisible to human eyes, alien watchers had seen the crash. The Zephyrian research station orbited the planet, studying its weather and geology. They had watched the primitive human ship fall apart and crash. "Interesting," said Commander Veltar as he studied the readings. "The aliens survived the impact, but they will not last long with such basic technology." Science Officer Kethra looked at the data. Their escape pods are very simple. Just metal containers with chemical rockets. How did such a primitive species even reach space? "It matters little," Veltar replied. "They have only basic survival equipment. This planet's environment will kill them within days. We will document their extinction for our research files." The Zephyrians had advanced technology. Their ships could travel faster than light. Their cities floated in the air. They had conquered death and disease. To them, humans looked like cave people who had somehow stolen a spaceship. But the aliens did not understand humans. They had never seen what people could do when they had to survive. They had never watched humans adapt, build, and overcome impossible challenges. On the planet's surface, Captain Lisa Adams gathered her crew. They had emergency supplies for 7 days. After that, they would have to live off the land or die. "All right, people," she said. "We have work to do. First, we need to find water and shelter. Then we figure out how to stay alive long enough for rescue to find us." The crew looked at the alien landscape around them. It was scary and unknown. But they were humans. Their ancestors had survived ice ages, floods, plagues, and wars. They had crossed oceans in wooden boats and climbed the highest mountains. 12 people with basic survival kits stood on an alien world. Above them, advanced. Aliens watched and waited for them to die. The aliens were about to learn something new about the human species. High above the planet, the Zephyrian research station watched the crash site through powerful sensors. Commander Veltar sat in his command chair, studying the readings with his science team. The station was invisible to human eyes, hidden by advanced technology. "The primitive aliens have survived their landing," reported Science Officer Kethra. Her blue skin shimmered as she worked at her control panel. 12 individuals are moving around the crash site. Veltar nodded. The Zephyrians had been studying this planet for many years. They wanted to know if it could support life. Many species had tried to survive here. All had failed within days. "What technology do they have?" he asked. Kethra checked her screens. "Very basic tools, metal containers with simple supplies. No energy weapons, no environmental suits, no advanced shelter systems. They appear to be using chemical fire for heat and light." Other Zephyrians in the station laughed. Chemical fire was something their people had not used for thousands of years. It was what primitive cave dwellers used. "How long do you estimate they will survive?" Veltar asked. "Based on previous observations of other species, no more than 5 planetary rotations," Kethra replied. The night temperatures drop to -20 degrees. The day temperatures reach 50 degrees. Without proper shelter, they will die quickly. On the planet's surface, the humans faced their first challenge. Captain Lisa Adams had gathered her crew around the largest piece of wreckage. The metal was still hot from the crash, but it would provide some protection from the wind. "Okay, people," she said. "Let's see what we have to work with." Each crew member carried a standard survival kit. The kits contained basic tools, emergency food for 7 days, water purification tablets, a multi-tool, fire starter, emergency blanket, and a small medical kit. Not much for staying alive on an alien world. Dr. Sam Mitchell knelt beside some strange plants. They were purple and had thick leaves like rubber. "These might be edible," he said, "but I need to test them first. We don't want to poison ourselves." Jake Morrison studied the landscape. The ground was rocky, but not impossible to dig. There were small streams of water running down from the mountains. Some areas had more plant life than others. "We need shelter first," he said. "The temperature is already dropping, and we have maybe 4 hours until dark." Greg Phillips was checking Tony Blake's injured leg. The navigator had hurt it badly in the crash. "It's not broken," Greg said, "but you need to stay off it for a few days." Helen Carter looked at her broken arm. It hurt, but Greg had set it with a splint made from pod wreckage. She could still use her other arm to help with light work. "What about water?" asked Kate Johnson. She was the communications officer, but like everyone else, she needed to help with survival. Jake pointed to a stream about 50 yards away. "That looks clean, but we should purify it anyway. We don't know what kind of bacteria or chemicals might be in it." Danny Foster was already working with pieces of metal from the crashed pods. As the ship's mechanic, he knew how to make things from spare parts. He was trying to build a simple shelter frame. "This metal is good quality," he said. "If we can bend it right, we can make a strong framework. Then we need something to cover it." Lisa watched her crew work. They were scared, but they were not giving up. Each person was using their skills to help the group survive. This was what humans did best, work together when things got bad. The Zephyrians continued to watch from space. They had cameras that could see every detail of the crash site. To them, the humans looked like insects crawling around in the dirt. "Look at their pathetic attempts at organization," Peltar said. "They are trying to build shelter from scrap metal. They are using plant material as binding agents. How primitive." But as the hours passed, something unexpected happened. The humans were making progress. Danny Foster and Jake Morrison had built a basic framework from bent metal. Helen Carter, working with her good arm, was weaving plant fibers together to make rope. Dr. Mitchell had found several types of edible plants. He was being very careful, testing small amounts first. His knowledge of earth plants helped him guess which alien plants might be safe. "This one tastes like spinach," he told the group. "And this root might be like a potato. If I'm right, we have found food that will last longer than our emergency rations." Rick Stone was working on something that surprised the watching aliens. He was building a fire pit using rocks and metal pieces. But it was not just any fire pit. He was designing it to burn efficiently and provide maximum heat. "The wind comes from the west," he explained to the others. "If we position the fire here, it will heat our shelter, and the smoke will blow away from us." As the sun set, the humans had accomplished something remarkable. They had built a shelter that would protect them from the cold night. It was not beautiful, but it was strong and warm. The shelter was made from bent metal poles covered with salvaged fabric and woven plant fibers. The walls were thick enough to keep out the wind. The floor was raised off the ground to prevent heat loss. Inside, they had organized their supplies carefully. Food was stored in the center, where it would not freeze. Medical supplies were kept in a sealed container. Tools were arranged so everyone could find them quickly. Greg Phillips had set up a medical area in one corner. He had everything he needed to treat injuries and sickness. The light from their fire let him work even after. Dark. Kate Johnson was working on the radio equipment. Most of it had been damaged in the crash, but she thought she could fix some parts. If they could send a distress signal, rescue ships might find them. "The problem is power," she explained. "Our batteries will not last long. We need to find another way to generate electricity." Jake Morrison was already thinking about that problem. "We have metal, magnets from the ship's equipment, and running water. We might be able to build a simple generator." The Zephyrians watched all of this with growing confusion. According to their calculations, the humans should be dying from cold and hunger. Instead, they were building, planning, and solving problems. "This is not normal behavior," Kethra reported. "Most species panic when stranded. These creatures are acting like they have done this before." "Perhaps their planet is very dangerous," suggested another scientist. "They might be naturally adapted for survival situations." Veltar studied the data more carefully. The humans had built their shelter in the best possible location. They had found food and water quickly. They were already making plans for tomorrow. "Continue monitoring," he ordered. "I want to know how long they can maintain this level of organization." As the night grew colder, the humans gathered around their fire. The temperature outside dropped to -15 degrees, but inside their shelter it was warm and comfortable. Lisa Adams looked at her crew. They were tired and scared, but they were alive. More importantly, they were thinking ahead. "Tomorrow we need to explore more of the area," she said. "We should look for better food sources and materials for improving our shelter." "I want to test more of these plants," Sam Mitchell added. "If we can find a good variety of food, we won't have to depend on our emergency rations." "I need to work on the radio," Kate Johnson said. "Maybe I can boost the signal strength by building a better antenna." Jake Morrison nodded. I want to try building that generator. If we can make electricity, we can power tools and lights. The Zephyrians listened to the human conversations through their sensors. They were amazed by what they heard. These aliens were not just trying to survive until rescue came. They were making plans to improve their situation. They are talking about building technology, Kethra reported. They want to create electrical power from basic materials. Impossible, Veltar said. They have no advanced tools or knowledge of our planet's resources. But the science officer was looking at detailed scans of the crash site. Commander, they have already identified 17 different types of useful plants. They have located 3 sources of fresh water. They have found clay deposits that could be used for construction. The humans had been on the planet for less than 1 day, but they had already learned more about local resources than the Zephyrian research station had discovered in months of study. As the night wore on, the humans took turns keeping watch and feeding the fire. They were not just staying warm, they were planning their next moves. I think we can make this work, Lisa said quietly to Jake Morrison. We have smart people and good teamwork. If we can stay healthy and work together, we might actually survive. This, Jake nodded. He was thinking about all the things they could build with the materials around them. Metal from the ship, plants for fiber, clay for construction, running water for power. We might do more than survive, he said. We might actually build something good here. Above them, the Zephyrians continued to watch. They had expected to document another failed colonization attempt. Instead, they were seeing something they had never witnessed before. The humans were not just surviving, they were adapting. And that was something the advanced aliens had never learned to do. 2 weeks had passed since the crash. The Zephyrian research station continued to monitor the human survivors with growing amazement. What they saw challenged everything they thought they knew about primitive species. Commander, Veltar stood before the main viewing screen, watching the crash site that had been transformed into something unexpected. Science Officer Kethra, explain to me what I am seeing. Kethra worked at her control panel, zooming in on different areas of the human settlement. Sir, the aliens have created structures that should not be possible with their basic technology. They are using principles of engineering that we did not expect them to understand. On the planet's surface, the human camp looked nothing like it had 2 weeks ago. The simple shelter had grown into a complex of connected buildings. Smoke rose from several different areas, indicating multiple fire sources, and work areas. Jake Morrison stood beside what looked like a small factory. He had built a forge using metal from the crashed pods and clay from a nearby riverbank. The forge burned hot enough to melt and shape metal into useful tools. Hand me that piece of steel, he said to Danny Foster, who was working the bellows. The mechanical device pushed air into the fire, making it burn hotter. They had made the bellows from salvaged materials and animal hide. Yes, animal hide. Dr. Sam Mitchell had discovered that the planet had wildlife. Small creatures that looked like rabbits lived in the rocks. Larger animals that resembled deer grazed in the valleys. All of them were edible and provided materials for tools and clothing. This is incredible, Mitchell said to Helen Carter as they checked their food storage area. We have identified 43 different edible plants, 15 types of animals, and 6 different sources of materials for construction. Helen's broken arm had healed well. She was now working as the group's expert on plant fibers. She had learned to weave strong ropes, cloth, and even waterproof materials from local plants. The fiber from these blue plants is stronger than anything we had on Earth, she explained. When we braid it together, it can hold more weight than steel cable. The Zephyrians found this impossible to believe. She is weaving plant material into load-bearing structures, Kethra reported. Our scans show the tensile strength is remarkable, But the humans were just getting started. Captain Lisa Adams had organized the crew into specialized teams, each working on different aspects of their survival and growth. Greg Phillips had set up a medical center that impressed even the advanced alien observers. Using tools made by Jake, Morrison, and medicines made from local plants, identified by Sam Mitchell, he could treat injuries and illnesses that would challenge doctors on Earth. "I've identified 3 plants that work as antibiotics," he explained to the group. "This red root works like aspirin for pain, and this purple flower can be made into a paste that heals cuts faster than anything we had on the ship." Kate Johnson had been working on their most ambitious project. She had successfully repaired and improved their radio equipment. More importantly, she had built a power system to run it. "The generator is working perfectly," she announced to the group. "We are now producing enough electricity to power our lights, radio, and tools." The generator was a masterpiece of simple engineering. Jake Morrison had used metal from the ship to build a water wheel. The wheel was connected to magnets and wire coils that created electricity when the wheel turned. Running water from the stream provided the power. "Impossible," Veltar said as he watched the system work. "They have created electrical power from scrap metal and running water. Our engineer said it could not be done with such primitive materials." But the humans were not finished. Tony Blake, whose leg had healed completely, had been exploring the area around their camp. He had found something that would change everything. "There's a cave system about 2 miles north," he reported. "It's huge. Multiple chambers, fresh water, and natural ventilation. We could move our entire operation underground. The caves would protect them from weather and provide space for expansion." But more importantly, Tony had found something else in the caves. "There are mineral deposits," he said. "Iron ore, copper, and what looks like coal. We could have a real mining and manufacturing operation." The Zephyrians listened to this conversation with shock. These humans were not just surviving. They were planning to build an industrial base on the planet. "They are discussing mining operations," Kethra reported. "They want to extract and process raw materials for construction and manufacturing." "This is not survival behavior," Veltar said. "This is colonization behavior. They are planning to stay permanently." On the planet, the humans were already making plans to expand their settlement. Rick Stone had been working with Danny Foster to build more complex tools and machines. They had created a workshop that would not look out of place in a modern factory. "We can build almost anything now," Rick explained to the group. "We have metalworking, woodworking, and textile production. We can make tools, furniture, clothing, and even complex machines." The workshop contained tools that the humans had built from scratch. There were hammers, saws, drills, and even a simple lathe for shaping metal. Everything was powered by their water wheel generator. Helen Carter had established what could only be called a farm. She had cleared land, planted crops, and created irrigation systems. The alien plants grew well under her care, providing food that was better than their original emergency rations. "We will have a harvest in 6 weeks," she announced. "After that, we will have enough food to last through the winter and still have seeds for next year." The Zephyrians were amazed by the farming operation. "They have created agriculture on a planet they knew nothing about," Kethra said. "They are growing food that will sustain them indefinitely." But perhaps the most impressive achievement was what Dr. Mitchell had accomplished. He had not just found edible plants. He had begun to understand the planet's entire ecosystem. "The animals migrate in predictable patterns," he explained to the group. "The plants have seasonal cycles that we can predict. The weather follows patterns that we can prepare for." He had created detailed maps showing where to find different resources at different times of the year. He knew which plants grew best in which locations. He understood how the animals moved and when they were most available for hunting. This is not primitive survival, Veltar said as he reviewed the data. This is sophisticated environmental science. They understand this planet better than we do. The human settlement now covered several acres. There were separate buildings for different activities, workshops, food storage, medical care, and living. Spaces. Paths connected all the buildings, and the whole area was organized with careful planning. At the center of it all was a meeting area, where the crew gathered each evening to plan the next day's work. They had built comfortable chairs and tables from local wood. They had lights powered by their generator. They even had a crude but functional kitchen. "I have an announcement," Captain Adams said during one of their evening meetings. "Kate has been working on our radio transmission. She thinks she can boost the signal strength enough to reach Earth." The crew was excited by this news. After 2 weeks, they were eager to let people know they were alive and safe. "The problem is that we need a much larger antenna," Kate explained. "We need to build a transmission tower about 100 feet tall." "Can we do it?" Lisa asked. Jake Morrison smiled. "With the materials we have and the tools we've built, yes. We can build a tower that will reach any ship in this system." The Zephyrians listened to this conversation with growing respect. "They are planning to build a transmission tower," Kethra reported, "using only materials they have found and tools they have made." "How is this possible?" Veltar asked. "They crashed here with nothing but basic survival supplies." "Sir," Kethra said carefully, "I think we have been wrong about these creatures. They are not primitive. They are adaptive. There is a difference. The science officer was right. The humans were not using advanced technology because they did not need it. They were using the right technology for their situation. Simple tools that worked well and could be repaired easily. Their approach is actually superior to ours in many ways," Kethra continued. "We depend on complex systems that fail easily. They build simple systems that work reliably." As the days passed, the human settlement continued to grow and improve. They built better buildings, better tools, and better systems for everything they needed. More importantly, they were happy. The Zephyrians could see through their sensors that the humans were not just surviving. They were thriving. They laughed, they sang, they told stories around their fires. "They are enjoying themselves," Kethra observed. "This is not the behavior of desperate survivors. This is the behavior of successful colonists." Commander Veltar had to agree. These humans had done something remarkable. They had crash-landed on a hostile planet with minimal supplies and turned it into a thriving settlement in just 2 weeks. "Continue monitoring," he ordered. "I want to see what they do next." What they did next would amaze the Zephyrians even more. The humans were just getting started. The weather monitoring station on the Zephyrian research platform detected massive storm systems approaching the planet. Commander Veltar studied the data with his science team, knowing that this would be the ultimate test of the human survivors. "Storm will reach their location in 3 days," reported weather specialist Chenka. "Wind speeds will exceed 200 kilometers per hour. Temperatures will drop to -40 degrees. Lightning strikes will be constant." Science Officer Kethra nodded grimly. "No species has ever survived a storm of this magnitude on this planet. The humans have done well, but this will destroy everything they have built." Commander Veltar agreed. "Begin detailed recording. We will document how quickly their settlement is destroyed. It will provide valuable data for future colonization attempts by other species." The Zephyrians had advanced technology that could predict weather patterns months in advance. They knew exactly when storms would hit and how powerful they would be. They also knew that no simple structures could survive such conditions. On the planet's surface, the humans had been watching the weather too. Tony Blake had been studying cloud patterns and wind directions for weeks. He had built simple weather instruments from salvaged materials. Big storm coming, he announced to the group during their evening meeting. Maybe the biggest we've seen since we got here. Dr. Sam Mitchell had been observing animal behavior. The local wildlife was acting strange, gathering food and seeking shelter. The animals know something is coming, he said. They're preparing for something major. Captain Lisa Adams looked around at her crew. They had built an amazing settlement in just a month. But she knew that nature could destroy in hours what they had built over weeks. All right, people, she said. We've faced challenges before. We'll face this one too. What do we need to do? Jake. Morrison had been thinking about this problem for days. As the chief engineer, he understood that their buildings needed to be stronger to survive a major storm. We need to reinforce everything, he said. The buildings, the workshop, the power systems. Everything needs to be stormproof. Danny Foster. Agreed. We have enough materials to add support beams to all the structures. We could also dig drainage channels to prevent flooding. The Zephyrians watched as the humans began their preparations. They expected to see panic and desperate attempts to build stronger shelters. Instead, they saw something very different. They are not just reinforcing their buildings, Kethra observed. They are redesigning them. They are making improvements that will make the structures better, even after the storm passes. The humans had learned something important during their time on the planet. Every challenge was also an opportunity to improve their situation. They were not just trying to survive the storm, they were using it as a chance to build better. Jake. Morrison and his construction team worked day and night to strengthen their buildings. But they were not just adding supports. They were adding new features that would make life easier and safer. We're adding storm shutters to all the windows, he explained to Rick Stone. But we're also adding better ventilation systems and improved heating. The workshop was completely redesigned. Not only would it survive the storm, but it would also be better organized and more efficient. New work areas were added, and the power systems were improved. Helen Carter worked with her agricultural team to protect their crops. They built greenhouse structures that would shield plants from wind and hail, but they also used the opportunity to expand their growing areas. After the storm, we'll have 3 times as much growing space, she said, and it will all be protected from future bad weather. The Zephyrians were amazed by this approach. They are not just defending against the storm, Veltar noted. They are using it as motivation to improve their entire settlement. Dr. Mitchell had been studying the storm patterns and realized something important. The storms bring nutrients from other parts of the planet, he explained. The soil will be much richer after the storm passes. This information helped the agricultural team plan for expanded farming after the storm. They were not just trying to survive. They were planning to thrive. Kate Johnson had been working on the most important project of all. The radio transmission tower was nearly complete, but it needed to be strong enough to survive the storm winds. We're not just building a tower, she explained to the group. We're building a communication center that will work in any weather conditions. The tower was designed to bend with the wind without breaking. It had guy wires that could be adjusted for different wind conditions. Most importantly, it had backup systems that would keep working even if parts of it were damaged. As the storm approached, the humans made final preparations. Food and water were stored in underground chambers. Medical supplies were secured in waterproof containers. All equipment was checked and double-checked. Everyone knows their assignments, Captain Adams announced. We'll work in teams to maintain the buildings and systems during the storm. No one goes outside alone. The Zephyrians watched these preparations with growing respect. Their organization is remarkable, Kethra said. Every person knows exactly what to do. They have backup plans for their backup plans. When the storm finally arrived, it was everything the weather specialists had predicted. The wind howled like a living thing, tearing at the buildings and trying to destroy everything in its path. Lightning turned the sky white every few seconds. Rain fell so hard it was difficult to see more than a few feet, but the human buildings held firm. The reinforced structures bent with the wind but did not break. The drainage systems channeled water away from the settlement. The power systems continued to work, providing light and heat throughout the storm. Impossible, Veltar said, as he watched the settlement survive the first day of the storm. No simple structure should be able to withstand these conditions. But the humans were not just surviving the storm, they were actively maintaining their settlement during it. Teams of people worked in shifts to check the buildings, clear drainage channels, and repair any damage. Greg Phillips had set up a medical station in the strongest building. He treated several injuries caused by flying debris, but his well-equipped medical center allowed him to handle even serious problems. Broken ribs, but no internal bleeding, he reported after treating Kate Johnson, who had been hit by a piece of metal. She'll be fine in a few weeks. The medical supplies that Greg had made from local plants proved to be just as good as anything they had brought from Earth. Pain relievers, antibiotics, and healing compounds all worked perfectly. Jake Morrison spent the storm moving between different buildings, checking systems, and making repairs. His engineering skills were put to the test as he reinforced weak spots and fixed problems as they developed. The workshop roof needs more support, he reported during one of their regular check-ins. But the power system is working perfectly. We have electricity for lights, heat, and tools throughout the storm. Danny Foster worked with him to make emergency repairs. They had prepared extra materials before the storm, so they could fix problems quickly. Their teamwork was so good that they could communicate without words. Even in the howling wind, the storm raged for 6 full days. The Zephyrians had expected the human settlement to be destroyed within hours. Instead, they watched as the humans not only survived, but continued to improve their situation. "Look at this," Kethra said, pointing to her sensor readings. "They are using the storm time to work on indoor projects. They are making tools, processing food, and even conducting research." Dr. Mitchell had indeed been using the storm time productively. With everyone trapped indoors, he had time to study plant samples and animal specimens. He made important discoveries about the planet's ecosystem. "The storm brings seeds from other regions," he explained to the group. "After it passes, we'll have access to new types of plants that we've never seen before." Helen Carter had been working on textile production during the storm. Using plant fibers and simple tools, she had created cloth that was stronger and more comfortable than anything they had before. "This fabric is waterproof, but still breathable," she said, showing off a jacket she had made. "We can make clothing that will protect us from any weather this planet can produce." Tony Blake had been studying the storm patterns and making detailed notes. "I think I can predict when the next storm will come," he said. "If I'm right, we'll have 3 months to prepare for the next one." On the 4th day of the storm, something remarkable happened. Kate Johnson's communication system came online. The radio tower, despite being battered by winds and lightning, was successfully transmitting a signal into space. "Earth, this is the crew of the Phoenix," she broadcast. "We survived the crash and have established a settlement on planet Kepler 442b. We are safe and requesting pickup when possible." The message was weak but clear. More importantly, it would reach any rescue ships that might be looking for them. The Zephyrians intercepted the transmission. "They have successfully contacted their home world," Kethra reported. "Their communication technology is working despite the storm conditions." Commander Veltar was beginning to understand that these humans were unlike any species he had studied before. "They are not just surviving," he said. "They are thriving under conditions that would kill most advanced civilians." 3 months had passed since the Phoenix crashed on the alien world. The Zephyrian research station had been watching the human survivors every day, and what they saw had changed their understanding of intelligence and adaptation forever. Commander, Veltar called a meeting of the entire Science Council. Representatives from 12 different Zephyrian research facilities gathered in the station's main conference room. They had come to hear about the remarkable humans. Colleagues, Veltar began. What we have witnessed challenges everything we thought we knew about primitive species and survival. On the planet below, the human settlement had grown into something that could only be called a small city. The original crash site was now the center of a thriving community with workshops, farms, research facilities, and comfortable living areas. Dr. Sam Mitchell stood in what had become the planet's first botanical garden. Row after row of organized plants grew in carefully planned plots. Some were food crops that would feed the growing settlement. Others were medicinal plants that supplied Greg Phillips' medical center. We now have 47 different food crops, Mitchell explained to a group of visitors from other human settlements. Yes, other settlements. Word of their success had spread, and other crash survivors and explorers had come to learn from them. The variety gives us nutrition that is better than anything we had on Earth, he continued. Plus, we've discovered 3 plants that seem to have healing properties that we never imagined. Jake Morrison had built what could only be described as a small factory. The workshop now covered 2 acres and contained sophisticated machinery built entirely from salvaged materials and local resources. We can manufacture anything we need, he said to Danny Foster as they watched their latest creation take shape. It was a vehicle designed for exploring the planet's surface, built from metal they had mined and refined themselves. From raw ore to finished product, all made right here, Danny replied with pride. And it's more reliable than anything we could have brought from Earth. The Zephyrians had been monitoring the manufacturing facility with growing amazement. They have created an industrial base that rivals our own, Science Officer Kethra reported. Their methods are different from ours, but the results are equally impressive. Helen Carter had established what was essentially an agricultural university. She had not only perfected farming on the alien world, but had begun teaching others how to do the same. The key is understanding the planet's natural cycles, she explained to a group of new arrivals. Work with the environment instead of fighting against it. Her farming methods had been so successful that the settlement now produced more food than it could use. They had begun trading with other groups across the planet. The communication center that Kate Johnson had built was now in constant contact with Earth, other human settlements, and even some friendly alien species they had encountered. We have 3 ships arriving next week, she announced during the settlement's daily meeting. 2 are rescue ships from Earth, and 1 is a trade vessel from the Centauri colonies. But the most impressive achievement was what Captain Lisa Adams had accomplished as a leader. She had not just kept her crew alive. She had created a society that attracted people from across the galaxy. We started with 12 people and basic survival kits, she said to the assembled crowd. Now we have over 200 residents, and more arriving every week. The settlement had grown because people wanted to live there. It was not just a place to survive. It was a place to thrive. Tony Blake had become the settlement's chief explorer and cartographer. His maps of the planet were more detailed and accurate than anything the Zephyrians had produced during years of study. We've identified 17 different climate zones, he reported. Each one has unique resources and opportunities. We're planning settlements in 12 of them. Rick Stone had established a school where children learned everything from basic survival skills to advanced engineering. The settlement was not just growing, it was planning for future generations. These children will grow up understanding both Earth technology and this planet's resources, he explained. They'll be able to build things we can't even imagine. Greg Phillips had created a medical center that provided better health care than many Earth hospitals. Using a combination of Earth knowledge and local resources, he could treat diseases and injuries that would baffle doctors back home. The plant-based medicines work better than anything we synthesized on Earth, he said. And we've learned surgical techniques that are more effective because they work with the body's natural healing. The Zephyrians had been forced to completely revise their understanding of human capabilities. They have created a civilization from nothing, Veltar said to the Science Council. In 3 months, they have accomplished what takes most species decades. But the most important realization came when the Zephyrians decided to make contact with the humans directly. "We wish to meet with your leaders," the alien message said when it arrived at Kate Johnson's communication center. Captain Adams agreed to the meeting. She was curious about the aliens, who had been watching them from space. The meeting took place in the settlement's main conference room. Commander Veltar and Science Officer Kethra came down from their station in a small shuttle. They had expected to meet desperate survivors grateful for any help. Instead, they found confident leaders of a thriving community. "Welcome to New Phoenix," Captain Adams said as she greeted the aliens. "We're honored to have visitors from the research station." Veltar was surprised by the humans' confidence and hospitality. "We have been watching your settlement with great interest," he said. "We did not expect you to survive, much less prosper." "We appreciate your honesty," Adams replied. "We understand that this planet has challenged other species. We're happy to share what we've learned." The aliens were given a tour of the settlement. What they saw amazed them beyond words. In the workshop, Jake Morrison showed them machinery that was both simpler and more effective than Zephyrian equivalents. "We build things to last and to be repaired easily," he explained. "Complex systems are fragile systems." In the medical center, Greg Phillips demonstrated surgical techniques that the aliens had never seen. "We combine Earth knowledge with local resources," he said. "The result is medicine that is both advanced and sustainable." In the agricultural areas, Helen Carter showed them farming methods that produced more food per acre than Zephyrian agricultural planets. "Understanding the ecosystem is more important than controlling it," she explained. But the most impressive thing was the humans themselves. They were happy, healthy, and optimistic about the future. They had not just survived a disaster, they had used it as an opportunity to build something better. "How did you this?" Kethra asked during a private conversation with Dr. Mitchell. "Your species had no knowledge of this planet, no advanced technology, no support from home." Mitchell thought about the question carefully. "I think it's because we've had to survive challenges for millions of years," he said. "Every human carries the knowledge of ancestors who faced ice ages, floods, famines, and disasters. We don't just adapt to survive, we adapt to thrive." The alien scientist was beginning to understand. "Your species has been tested by adversity. Ours has been protected by technology. Both approaches have value," Mitchell replied. "But when everything goes wrong, you need to know how to start over with nothing but your hands and your brain." When the rescue ships finally arrived from Earth, they found something unexpected. The stranded survivors did not want to be rescued. "We've built something important here," Captain Adams explained to the rescue mission commander. "We'd like to stay and continue our work." Some of the crew did choose to return to Earth, but most decided to remain on the planet they now called home. The Zephyrians were so impressed by what they had witnessed that they requested permission to establish a research partnership with the human settlement. "We would like to learn from you," Commander Veltar said to Captain Adams. "Your methods of adaptation and problem-solving could benefit our entire civilization." The partnership was approved. Zephyrian scientists came to study human engineering, agriculture, and medicine. In return, they shared their advanced knowledge of space travel and energy production. "This is remarkable," Kethra said as she worked alongside Jake Morrison in the workshop. You have achieved with simple tools what we accomplish with complex technology. Simple tools have advantages, Jake replied. When something breaks, we can fix it ourselves. When conditions change, we can adapt quickly. The human settlement became a model for successful colonization across the galaxy. Delegates from dozens of species came to study their methods. Dr. Mitchell established a research institute that studied adaptation and survival. Every species has something to teach, he said. Our job is to learn from each other. Helen Carter's agricultural methods were adopted on planets across the galaxy. Her principle of working with natural systems instead of fighting them revolutionized farming for many species. Greg Phillips' medical techniques, combining advanced knowledge with natural resources, became standard practice in frontier medicine. Kate Johnson's communication systems, designed to work reliably under any conditions, were adopted by exploration fleets throughout the galaxy. The set